Hi, I'm Mick Garris. Welcome once again to the Fantasy Film Festival. We have a special request playhouse here. We're showing Alien. And don't pay attention to the Z Magazine guide that says that director Ridley Scott is with us, because he is not. We've had a scheduling problem. However, we do have the co-star of the film, Veronica Cartwright. Veronica, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
You've done, even at the age, what, you were 10 years old when you did The Birds, something like that?
No, I was 12 and I had my 13th birthday on the set. Hey, you know.
Okay. At 12 and 13, you did The Birds, which was a thriller. You did the 1976 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 78 version, and then Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Are you particularly drawn to thrillers?
I like horror movies. So it just happens that those were good parts, and so that's why I was interested in doing them, you know.
They're probably your three best-known parts. Well, what's the attraction to you of the stories of terror and suspense?
What's my attraction to?
Yeah.
I like getting scared. I don't know. I love them. They're terrific films.
Just the energy behind it?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose there's a part in every one of us that likes to have, you know, feel sort of that adrenaline rush and have things jump out at you.
Do you go
like
see
that.
them a lot?
Yeah, I do.
You just saw one recently you enjoyed with a hammer in the head and the like.
Oh, that was great. Honeymoon Killers. It was terrific. 1969. It was great. It was great.
Okay, as a child actress, well, on The Birds, let's start out talking a little bit about that. That was a thriller, but to a 12-year-old on the set, it was probably very dull to be there day after day. Is that true?
Well, actually, it was a very long shoot. I think it was like 5 months shooting. But there were a lot of kids involved with the thing, because the whole thing was, you know, a lot of the things were school children and things like that. And the teacher, of course, gets pecked to death by the birds. And so, I mean, there were a lot of kids around that we got to play with. I mean, the birds, it was fascinating in a sense, because so many of the birds weren't real. I mean, you had a lot of trained birds, which were taught to do certain things, and then there were a lot of like stencils in the background and stuff like that. We had to run on treadmills and have these birds come down at us, and that was great. It was like, you know, bowl over the kids. It was, you run on this, and one kid would go, everybody else would go too. It got weird when we did the scene inside the house where all the little finches come down, because we actually had 15,000 birds in that one, and we were in a plastic cage with an oxygen tank, and they just shot them down from shelves inside the chimney, and that was freaky. But I don't know, the whole thing was fascinating to me. I didn't find myself getting bored.
What do you think of the problems of a child actor, especially one who continues the career throughout adulthood?
I think it's really hard for people to make the transition. I think there's very few people that have actually been able to do it, because people either think of you as being younger, like you were in the films that you'd done, and it's hard for them to accept that you now are grown up. They don't know quite where to place you. And they have weird images. I mean, you were younger, so they think of you always as being younger. You can be 22 years old, and they'll assume you go on an interview and they say, "Oh, I thought you were 16." And it's very weird. It's hard to make that transition. Was
your youth as an actress a stressful time for you because of that with your peers?
Well, see, I was real lucky when I was a kid. I worked constantly. I mean, from the age of about 11 on, I just was one thing after another, and there were always different parts. Sometimes if I had a kid, I don't know that I would put my child in it, because of you miss out on things. But at the same time, that was my life. I mean, it was exciting. That's why I want to do it now. I mean, so those things I just loved it.
What was the slowest point? Now, Jackie Cooper was on when we had Superman, and he talked about the slowest point in an actor's career who goes from childhood to adulthood as a performer is when they start to hit puberty. The voice starts to change, to get a little awkward. What time for you was the most difficult?
Well, see, I always looked really young for my age, so I was able to carry that through. Because I ended up being on Daniel Boone series, And I did that for 2 years. And everybody said, well, just wait until you're 18. The work will really go then, because you see, you have to have a school teacher and everything on the set. It cuts down on your hours. I'll tell you, the minute I hit 18, I couldn't get any work. It was ridiculous because I looked too young. I mean, I didn't look 18, and also I have never fit into a category. I mean, I didn't have long blonde hair and look like the girl next door. I've always sort of been able to play character parts, so it was really hard for me. Then I got married, and I sort of stepped back for a little bit and started again. But there'd be like periods of time, which were 3 and 4 years, which is a long time, and you start to get... But that's what I wanted to do, so I stuck with it.
Well, what time did things... You've been working a lot lately. What do you think was really the impetus for the current state of activity?
Well, I went to an acting class for 3 years. Let's see, I was about 24. And, no, 22, I guess. And I did that for about 3 years. And I wasn't getting any work. I worked as a waitress, and I got some money together. And I decided to go over to England to see if I could get any work there, because I'm a British citizen. So I moved over there for a year, and I got inserts while I was over there. And so that sort of was a boost. And I came back, and as a result of that, I ended up going south. And that helped me get Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it just sort of kept going from there. And I don't know, I think if you have to take sometimes things into your own hands. Mm-hmm. And it was a case of, you can learn so much, you know, but unless you practice it, you're not going to be any good at it. And so I just felt I had to make that effort to go out and practice that.
What are the things you've enjoyed most as a performer, the roles you've enjoyed most?
Oh, I loved inserts.
Really?
Sorry, guys, you haven't seen it yet on the channel.
Right.
That was just, it was wonderful. I mean, she was a porno queen junkie. It was wonderful. It was so much fun.
Did you do a lot of research? Never mind.
No.
All right. Now, your sister Angela is also an actress. Mm-hmm. She was a regular on Make Room for Daddy and Lost in Space.
We're sci-fi sisters.
That's right. The SF sisters. Did you find yourself competing against one another? Or?
No, because she was tied up on the series for 7 years with Make Room for Daddy. Then she went into Lost in Space, and it was another 3 years. I don't know, we never really did, there was never jealousy or never really a competing thing, because we were both always up for different sets of things. I don't know, I'm 4 years older than she is.
Let's talk a little bit about Alien, since that's why we're here. Mm-hmm. When you first saw the script, what was your initial reaction to it?
I wasn't crazy about it.
No?
I think you have to be real careful with science fiction things, because it can, so many times they can just be really awful. I didn't have to read for it. I went in and met them. I went in and saw them again when I was over in England, which I happened to be over there for a holiday. I talked to Ridley Scott, and he was really fascinating. I mean, his whole ideas of how he wanted to do things and how he saw it, and the monster and the relationship to the people and things like that. He got you very excited about it. And then I heard that Yaphet Kotto and Tom Skerritt were going to be in it, and I decided, wow, this is something I'm missing here. So I went back and reread it, and I decided to do it.
From the script to what we actually see in the finished film, what sort of changes? I know, having read the script before the film, that there were certain changes in there. What are the differences between what you envisioned and what ended up?
Well, visually, I think it, because Ridley had such a defined idea, I think it came off. I mean, technically, I think the movie is really brilliant. I personally didn't find it to be that scary. Oh. I mean, there are moments in it which were the quick jumps, but I like psychological scare movies myself. Some, things that make you think a bit, or could it be there? I think they could have intensified that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. People have called this Alfred Hitchcock in space. What do you think of that?
See, Alfred Hitchcock's more psychological.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say Alfred Hitchcock in space.
All right.
Myself.
There were some sort of compromises made. I know the initial unfreezing of the astronauts was going to be shot nude.
Well, we sat around and discussed it and opted for doing it nude, because basically it was like babies. They were coming out of the shell. They'd been in there for months. I mean, our heartbeats were lowered, and then all of a sudden it's like giving birth, and this thing blossoms. So we all opted to do it nude. We couldn't get that passed, so they decided, well, we'd all wear shorts. I mean, the two girls would wear shorts. So we did that. Then we get down on the set, and they decided to stick Scotch tape around us. If you look real closely, you can see this. Because you lost 6 countries if you showed your nipples. And in a sense, it's a shame, because the whole premise of the thing, and the thing I think that worked really well, was the asexual aspect of the thing. The fact that there sort of wasn't a real femininity, or everybody was just, you know, the same. Nobody was after everybody's, you know, body and all that stuff. Which
People
was,
as opposed to
yeah, there were
men.
truckers in space. I mean, it was a dirty spaceship, and we were truckers, and we'd been out there for 4 years, supposedly, we'd been out there. Well, if you're out there that time, that whole thing is past by that point. You know, that point, you just have to get along.
Either that or relationships have developed.
So we didn't think of it as being a sexual thing at all. But I guess, you know,
in an earlier
people out
version
there-
of the script, I know there was a romantic scene.
Yeah, there was a scene between Ripley and Dallas. And they just cut it. They never shot it. They decided to cut it because they didn't feel it meshed with what the thing was, you know.
Probably the most famous scene in the film is referred to as the chest-burster scene. I don't want to ruin anything.
You said you weren't going to mention this.
I didn't say I wasn't going to mention it. I said I'm not going to talk about what
He was
is
cute.
shown.
I thought he was adorable.
Little monster. Anyway, it's a very intense scene in the film that I'm sure everyone has at least heard about, and most of you have seen. Was it shot as a surprise to everyone on the set?
Well, of course, reading the script, you know, the thing is supposed to happen. At one point, we had seen sort of a mock-up of the little baby, because we're shooting scenes that happened after that. So we sort of had an idea what it looked like, but, you know, they said, oh, wait until you see the real one. What happened was John Hurt went down, and he was, you know, all fixed up at the chest and
Fixed
everything
up
like
that we
that.
won't
And
talk too much about.
We sat in our dressing rooms for like 4 or 5 hours wondering what, and they wouldn't let us on the set. We get down to the set, you walk on, and there's this most horrible smell. They had buckets of offal in formaldehyde, and it was a very close set, because it was that whole room thing there was actually what it was, and you were shooting inside of that. The cameras all had plastic over them, and everybody was wearing raincoats. So we all got a little suspicious that something was going to happen. Well, of course, the whole chest was full of offal. And I was told that, I mean, he shot with 3 cameras, and the cameras were placed around the room so that they could get the initial reaction when the thing burst out and had happened. I was told I would get shot with blood just so we didn't get, I had no idea the jet was directly at my face. I got it, I got it square in the face. I flew off the back of the couch. Oh, it was unbelievable. The couch was jammed up against like a wall. I got stuck behind the couch. I mean, but those reactions were the initial, and nobody quite knew what was going to happen. It was really amazing.
Well, your resulting reaction, which is used in the film, is pretty convincing.
Well, I mean, it was great. I mean, it was a very, very good idea, I think, to sort of, you built up anticipation. You weren't quite sure what was going to happen. You were told maybe you knew where to go and stand, but that initial movement was great.
This film, as much integrity as it has, and the look and the class involved, when you come down to it, it is still a monster movie. How did people combat that during the making of this film? Psychologically amongst themselves, not going around, oh, we're making a monster movie.
Well, whenever you're doing anything, it has to be real. I mean, you can't fake it. I mean, you believe that there's a monster. I mean, it's the only way you can play it. It's the only way it's ever going to work. If you start mocking it, then it's not, you know, it's not fun anymore.
Well, you will believe there's a monster when you see Alien coming up right now after this interview. Thanks for being with us, and Veronica, thank you for being here. It was delightful.
Lovely. Bye.